All right, astronomy friends, we're just going to continue along with what we were just chatting about, this whole idea of electromagnetic radiation. So we've got our electromagnetic spectrum right here, and all stars emit basically all types of EM radiation. They release a whole lot of it. In fact, they release it along a what we might call a continuum, sometimes called a blackbody radiation curve. This whole curve right here has a peak, and the peak is basically the color that you see. This one is for the sun. The peak right there is right around the kind of you can see kind of in the yellowish orange range. But there's a whole lot of other stuff. I mentioned this before. There's a whole lot of stuff that goes beyond ultraviolet that's not fully recognized on this particular graph, and some stuff that goes in the other direction that is more radio waves. We also find that the hotter the star is, the higher the peak is. That makes sense. The hotter the thing is, the brighter it's going to be, but also it's going to shift the apparent color. You've heard of red hot, but you've also probably heard of like white hot, which is definitely hotter than red hot. So we basically get star temperature information by looking at their curve. Now, this becomes a little bit tricky because we need a way that we can actually look at it in many different wavelengths of light, and that's what spectroscopy is all about. So what we generally do is we break up the light. We send starlight into a prism or a diffraction grating, and you learn more about that in physics. Different wavelengths have slightly different speeds in a prism, so they bend a little bit differently. Like red will slow down by a certain amount, but violet slows down by a different amount. And that means that red goes through a material like a glass prism a bit faster than violet does, and that gives us a phenomenon called a rainbow. Of course, if you're talking about light that's going through water particles in the water molecules in the air, but you get the same thing for light from a star that's going through a prism. So it kind of seems like this. It's a little bit odd. You've probably seen rainbows before, but I don't know if you've seen light broken up by a prism before. It goes out in the order of red, orange, yellow, green, blue. Some people throw in indigo and violet, but it looks actually like that. Now, spectroscopy tells us that different light sources are going to display different color displays. And like water in the air is going to give you a traditional rainbow pattern with a few missing lines that you generally never notice. You can only see them with sophisticated devices. Other gases have what we might call a chemical fingerprint, and that helps us identify the gas by how much the light happens to be bent or refracted. And we can also tell a star's temperature from its spectrum. So spectroscopy goes back to the late 1800s, and historically, again, they would use a prism. You pass starlight through a prism, which worked really well, but you could get better results once technology kind of caught up with it, and they started using things called diffraction gratings a few years later. Diffraction gratings allowed you to be a lot more numerically precise, and you could determine wavelengths with great precision. The idea is kind of like that. White light goes in and it separates according to waves. If you think of light as being wave-like, it would look like that. If you think of light as being particle-like, it's kind of like that. In reality, as I mentioned earlier, light is kind of, it's got attributes of both waves and particles. It's not fully either one. Well, here's a little picture of the solar spectrum, which looks like a rainbow, but you see some prominent missing lines. And these missing lines actually tell us a lot about what the sun's made of. This is how we can do it. We compare it to known gases. The sun is primarily hydrogen and helium. It's mostly hydrogen and some helium, 92%, just under 8% helium. And then you got a whole lot of other trace, not a whole lot, but a small amount of trace gases. And you can tell all that from the spectrum. We can't drive out to the sun, take a cup of sun and bring it back and analyze it. So what we do is we analyze the starlight. That's the only way we can analyze anything from Earth, is by analyzing the spectrum from it. It's pretty cool. Now here's some classic spectra from some pure gases. You got mercury and lithium, cadmium, strontium, calcium, sodium. But, oh, I'm sorry, I went a little bit fast there. Each of those have a characteristic curve, and if you combine them together in certain amounts, you get different spectra. You can actually deconstruct the spectra from stars, and that's how we determine what they're made of. It's got a certain amount of this spectrum plus a certain amount of that spectrum. It's like, oh, then we can work backwards mathematically and figure out how much hydrogen and how much helium or how much methane it happens to have. That turns out to be very important when we wanted to know what Uranus and Jupiter and Saturn and Neptune were made of. By doing spectroscopic analysis, we find out there's a whole lot of methane, for example. Now I want to briefly talk about stellar types. Stellar types, there is a letter designation, and they go in order of decreasing temperature. O, B, A, F, G, K, M. There's a historical reasons for why those letters are chosen. I won't get into that, but it's not that interesting. Anyway, the temperature range goes from 60,000 Kelvin for O-type stars to just about 3,500 Kelvin for M-type stars. And there are further subdivisions. You do subdivisions from 0 to 9. So, for example, the brightest stars would be an O0, and it goes to O9. And then the next set goes from B0 down to B9, and then A0 to A9, all the way down to M0 to M9. There are other divisions under M. For example, there's C and S stars. Now, one way to remember this is by a little mnemonic that says, "Oh, be a fine girl," or "Oh, be a fine guy, kiss me." A little bit sexist, I guess, there. So I prefer "Our bright astronomers frequently generate killer mnemonics," which is cool if you know that mnemonic starts with an M. All right, people, here's where it gets interesting. This thing called the HR diagram. Now, HR diagram stands for the two people who independently came up with it, Hertzsprung and Russell. The HR diagram plots magnitude, which is basically a measure of brightness, from dim to bright, versus temperature, high to low, usually represented as a spectral type. You find out that the hottest stars are on the left of the graph, and they generally are brighter than cooler stars. But there's going to be some caveats to what I'm saying. That right there is a classic or typical HR Hertzsprung-Russell diagram. Over here on the left axis, on the vertical axis, you have got brightness that's being plotted, which is in terms of absolute magnitude. Over here, you got spectral type, which is O, B, A, F, G, K, M. So, that's the different types of spectral types. That's going in order of decreasing temperature, hottest here down to coolest. You kind of see a rough diagonal stripe here. That rough diagonal stripe is something that we call the main sequence, and that's where stars spend most of their lives. But they do move around on the chart or on the HR diagram. So as they get older, certain types of stars will become giants. Certain types of stars become supergiants. Certain types of stars, like our sun, ultimately become white dwarfs. So again, this is a complex looking chart, but it's a pretty simple idea. You've got brightness on the vertical axis, which can be measured by absolute magnitude or luminosity, and you got temperature on the x-axis, which could be measured by a spectral class or just simply numerical temperature. Anyway, this roughly diagonal streak here is called the main sequences, which is where most stars spend the bulk of their lives. Here's another HR diagram. Just the same kind of basic thing that you see. You also notice where the sun happens to be. The sun, as we're going to see, is a G2 star. And right now it's on the main sequence. It won't always be. Give it a few billion years, you'll find a sun over here. We won't be around to think about it, but, that's a whole other tragedy. And there's yet another HR diagram right there that gives you the location of white dwarfs, giants, supergiants, subgiants as well. And there's some of the more popular stars that you know about, like Betelgeuse and Rigel, which are easy to find there. All right, my friends, we're going to stop this video, and our next topic is going to be all about the Doppler effect, because we use the Doppler effect to find out a whole lot of other information about how stars move.